Hello friends, this is Leslie Klein, independent Stampin Up Demonstrator, and I'm here with a tutorial video for you guys showing you one product 4 ways. So let's get started. Today I'm going to talk to you guys about how to use the masks. And I'm going to show you guys masks from the 3 different sets that we have. And I'm going to show you different ways ranging from novice to advanced to use them. So one of the videos posted recently on the Stampin' Up Facebook showed a couple of different techniques for using masks. They were different techniques than I did. And one of the cards that they made, oh, it's stuck, hang on. Okay, sorry. One of the cards that they made was this one. They didn't have a sentiment or anything on it yet, but I saw it and I was like, oh my gosh, it's so cute. I have to make it. So I bought all of the masks. I made the one card and then I said, well, now I'm going to have to learn how to do more with this. So I played with them for the last couple of days and I want to show you guys what I've learned. So we're going to start with our card for a beginner. This card requires nothing other than a single stamp, ink, and paper. Anybody can do it. We're going to start with a piece of cardstock that I've cut down to 3 3/4 to 5 1/4. This is because I will mat it on a card base that's 4 by 5 1/2, and I like to have a 1/4 inch edge. And then if you mess this up, you don't ruin your entire card base. So we're going to need a piece of grid paper or a piece of scratch paper. If you don't have the Stampin' Up grid paper, that's okay. You're going to need an ink pad. This one I did in Bermuda Bay, but I don't like making the same exact card twice, so we're switching our color today to Fresh Freesia. You're also going to need a blending brush, which you can get through Stampin' Up as well. Your mask, this one is from the Plenty of Patterns. Let me grab it. And the one thing we don't sell at Stampin' Up is the washi tape. So to start, we're just going to put our paper down on our grid. I like to line mine up just because I'm picky like that, but you really don't have to. If I could figure out where my washi tape starts. There we go. So I put a little bit of temporary adhesive on the back side of my card just so it doesn't move around under the stencil, because that would not benefit us in any way. And then we're going to take our mask. So this one has, let's see if I can, 4 different little mandalas kind of, and we're going to use this one. I picked this one especially for the beginner because I liked how the dots came out in the corners and up at the top on all of the sides, and I felt like it would make it really easy to line it up centered on our card. So half of this, we've got 5 1/4 is going to be 2 1/2 plus 1/8. So we're going to look at our 2 and our half and then come down like halfway to the next quarter mark. And then I just try to, there. That looks pretty centered to me. Then we're going to take our washi tape, and without moving our mask or stencil, we're just going to tape it down so it doesn't move. If you're worried about blending into these on accident, I did the first time, not gonna lie. It happens to everybody and it is perfectly okay. You can also tape off those so that if you do happen to hit them with your ink, you don't ruin your card. Once that's down and matted, we're gonna take our ink pad and our blending brush. To ink this, literally just rub it. No special technique. And then we're just gonna rub this onto our stencil. I go in a swirling motion. And I try to kind of ink this dark because this is a monochromatic card, meaning we're using the same color to ink the background, but it's going to be faded. Nice swirling motions. Make sure you're coating all of the inside of that mask. Don't feel like that's going to end well if I don't tape there. Be really careful right there. Okay. Okay, once our center mandala is done, literally just lift the mask up. My washi tape is a little old and outdated, so it does kind of rip my paper sometimes. But it's okay, because we're going to blend the background, and then I think it's going to make it harder to see. So next, what we're gonna do is the corners. So to do our corners, I'm gonna take that same mandala on that same mask, and I wanna take and line up one of the corners. Into one of my corners. Once you have it spaced how you like, grab your washi tape. If you jiggle it, put it back. Grab your washi tape and just tape that down again. And then we're going to ink this in the same way that we inked our center. I'm just trying to be really careful in this corner so I don't get it on my paper. We'll get it on the paper, but only in the spots you want to. Okay. Then we're going to lift up again. And it does appear that we got just a little bit on our paper here, but it's so faded, and because we're monochroming it and doing the background anyways, I think we're gonna be okay. Then, this already has tape on it, so this should be fairly simple. We're just gonna line this up in our next diagonal corner. Again with our swirling motions. Being careful on our edges and our corners. And lift. Perfect. To do our background, I used the leftovers from my brush. And just swirled. Because this is an entire card and not just a portion of the card, you are probably going to end up needing to re-ink your brush. But we want to make sure that we're not hitting our background with a really dark pigmented brush, Freesia. So after you ink your brush, tap it out. Then come in and go back to your swirling motions. Swirling opposed to hard stroking and rubbing will help you to not lose the color you've already put on the card, and it will also help you to avoid harsh lines. Another technique you could use to avoid harsh lines is always start off of your paper. So ink your brush, tap it out, and don't just set it down. Start off to the side and blend up into your paper. Swirling, swirling, swirling. That's all you need for your background of this first card. To finish this off, I stamped a sentiment in the same color, so this would be fresh Freesia. I trimmed it out. If you're not comfortable with fussy cutting, you could easily cut this into a rectangle and put it there, and I put rhinestones on all of the dots. Moving on to our next card, which is a card for a casual crafter. For this card, we're going to use the geometric mask from the Plenty of Patterns mask collection. I did this card in the colors Polished Pink, Bermuda Bay, and Gorgeous Grape. So again, we're going to start with our background paper, or scratch paper, grid paper, whatever you have on hand. The same size cardstock, so we're going with 3 3/4 by 5 1/4. I line this up on my grid paper. You don't have to. Temporary adhesive. I did this as a horizontal card instead of vertical. And then I just set my geometric mask design on there. However you want. Again, our washi tape to hold our mask in place. For this card, we're going to be blending multiple colors. I started with my pink. And just work your ink wherever you want to. For mine, I came from the top left and the bottom right corners. For this one, I don't really feel like it matters if you have an even blend all the way around. I think it looks cooler if you have parts of dark pink and parts of light pink. Next, I moved on to my purple. And as we've talked about with blending in the past, when blending, you want to blend into your colors. So you don't want like a harsh line of we started here with pink and now all of a sudden it's purple. You want to blend your purple into your pink. And for our last color on this card, we're going to use Bermuda Bay. And again, with your Bermuda Bay, any color it's touching, you want to blend into. When you're finished, lift up your mask. And now we have a beautiful geometric blended design. To finish off this card, I heat embossed my sentiment with white embossing powder and the Whisper White ink pad on black cardstock. I matted it onto white and I decorated with a few gemstones. Next, we're going to move on to my personal favorite, which is a card for an intermediate crafter. In this card, we're not only maintaining our ink blending and using our masks, but we're introducing embossing with a mask. Yeah, embossing with the masks. So, and die cutting. No, we didn't die cut. Just embossing with a mask. Okay. I did two versions of this card. I did this one. And also this one, where I blended with more colors and I decorated with that harsh contrasting black. And I really liked both of them. But I'm going to show you this one today. For this card, you need the kind of like, I don't even know what this would be called. It's kind of makes me think of fleur-de-lis, but not really. But you need this mask, which is from Basic Patterns. To emboss this, you're going to take white cardstock in the same size. It's 3 3/4 by 5 1/4. You're going to center this however you want your design to be on there. And when you run it through your Stampin' Emboss machine or your Sizzix or your Big Kick or whatever you have at home, you're going to use your base plate, your silicone mat, and your texture impressions mat. My grandma calls them a knock-knock and a chamois. And then one of your base plates over top. To start, again, I already have one embossed, so we're gonna put this onto our grid paper again. And again, I used my temporary adhesive. You're gonna line this up. And then you're gonna take your stencil or your mask and you're going to line it up on that over like exactly how you had it in the machine, which will be simple because it's embossed, so you'll be able to see your outline. Once that's done, you're going to take your washi tape. If you're worried about your washi tape messing up your paper, don't tape on the actual cardstock. Tape it off to the corners. That's what I've done for every card since my first one, and I've been fine. Okay, so now that that's done, for this card, we used the colors Polished Pink, Daffodil Delight, Granny Apple, and Coastal Cabana. So you're just going to take clean my brush off a little bit. It's got a little of or just Grape on it. I'm going to take our polished pink and just blend over the mask in the same fashion that we did on the last card. We're working in quadrants because we have 4 colors on this card. So you'll want a quarter of it one color and then the next quarter another color, etc., etc. I don't know why my grandma calls it a knock knock and a chamois, but she said it when I was at her house. And when I got mine, I was so excited to call my grandma and tell her, Grandma, I bought a knock knock and a chamois, just because I feel like it's the funnest thing to say. I guess it's called a knock knock plate. I don't know. Okay, so there's our polished pink. Now we're moving into our Daffodil Delight. And again with blending, always remember that you want to blend up into your previous color, which is actually really neat on this, because if you blend your Daffodil Delight into your polished pink, you get orange. I think it looks kind of like Calypso Coral, but it adds like another layer of color into the card, which I really liked. I go over this probably a little more than I would really need to, because I like a very vibrant color on the textured impression part of the card. Next, we're going to move to our Granny Apple Green. And again, make sure you blend that up into your yellow. You'll get a little more of a limey green than Granny Apple already is, like a bright green. And finally, we're gonna do our Bermuda Bay. Nope, Coastal Cabana. It's Coastal Cabana. And when you blend that up into the Granny Apple Green, you get a little bit more of a dark greenish teal. When you've finished that, you're going to remove your mask. And now everywhere that was raised up, embossed, and textured on your cardstock should be colored. You could easily leave the card like this, but I thought it was fun to add a little bit of blending to the background as well. So without re-inking our brushes, we're just going to take the leftovers and go over it. This is going to give us more pastel, muted tones of the color that we used on top. Like with the first card, if you feel the need to re-ink your brush, it's okay, but make sure you tap off your excess color first. Now we're going to move down to our yellow. And then into our green. And lastly, into our Coastal Cabana. finished. To finish off this card, I stamped in Whisper White ink and embossed with the white embossing powder on black cardstock a sentiment, and then did another sentiment under it to finish it, stamped in Coastal Cabana. I embellished with matte black dots. This piece of paper was matted on black and then also matted back onto Coastal Cabana. Our final card is one that I created for the Advanced Crafter. For this card, we're using watercolor painters and ink refills opposed to ink pads. We're also using texturing embossing paste with our adorning mask, which is from our mini catalog, and we're using the snowflakes. To create this card, I used watercolor paper. I also took watercolor painters and put 3 to 5 drops of each color in them instead of using like a refill and like dipping a paintbrush in it. Earlier for this card, I used Coastal Cabana, Bermuda Bay, Misty Moonlight, and Rich Razzleberry. But for this card, I think I want to use Coastal Cabana, Bermuda Bay, and Pacific Point. We're also going to need our heat tool because we will heat set our ink in between layers. So for this card, we're working in thirds if we're doing 3 colors. Start with my Coastal Cabana. And initially, I just put my layers of ink on the card to kind of divvy it up and get my background. If it seems like water's not flowing through your water painter, give it a squeeze. And we're just gonna, there we go. Now we've got some flow. Now that we have our background, we're gonna take our heat tool and heat set. When it's done, it should be dry to the touch. So after this, I started individually laying colors on it heavily. That's how I got the like dark water patterns. So for this, I pretty much just squeezed a bunch of ink out, water ink, and I moved it around till it was in a sort of a water shape that I liked. And then we're gonna do it with our Bermuda Bay. I tried to make sure, again with blending, that I worked some of my colors up and down into the other colors. Heat set again. If you have a heat tool, most heat tools do have like high fans, and it will move your water around. So be mindful when using your heat tool of where your water is going to. If you think your water is going too far one direction, change the way you're holding your heat tool. Next, we're going to add a little more Pacific Point. And then we're going to continue layering our ink in the same fashion. You can do one color at a time or all of your colors at a time to try blending. Once I felt like I was really comfortable with my watercolor shapes and effects, I went through again to lay some more color onto the background. This will also slightly darken the shapes that you've just made. And I dropped my heat gun. Thanks, babe.
Well, that was mental. It's his actual, I'm pretty sure it's his actual ignition. Because I tore his column apart. And
If your paper starts to warp, it's okay. You can always just bend it back. I'm not very happy with my transition from Bermuda Bay to Pacific Point, so I want to try blending it out a little more. Much happier with that. I'm just going to get a fresh piece of graph paper here so we don't get water on this anywhere we don't want to. So I did mess up just a little bit right here. We got some of our Pacific Point because it was on my finger. That's okay. I'm pretty confident that we'd be able to cover that, and I'll show you how. So once this is done, go back to how we were, temporary tape. We're going to take this, line it up. So because of getting that blue spot, I'm going to be really careful how I position my snowflakes. I'm going to try to position it in a way that I can cover that with our texturing paste. I think that should cover most of it. Now, like earlier, I'm going to take my washi tape. It's really important on this one because this is covering our whole thing and because of how we're doing it. You don't want your washi tape to overlay the card. Unless it's going to do it in a spot where you're not going to have snowflakes, in which case it's acceptable. Then we're going to take a palette knife and our embossing paste. And rub it over those snowflakes. Make sure you're getting up into all of your corners. Because some of our colors are darker, like our Pacific points, I gave this just a minute or two to set. It doesn't take long. It fully sets and dries in, I'd say, about 20 minutes. So give it just a minute or two to start getting tacky, and then feel comfortable. If you feel comfortable, add another layer. On this layer, if you really are going for the added thickness, don't scrape. Make sure you put your excess back in your jar so you don't waste it. You can make 1 jar of embossing paste go quite a long way. Once you're finished with that, carefully remove your washi tape. And then gently lift it off of your card. This will need to dry for about 15 to 20 minutes. To finish mine off, I used some of the Simply Elegant trim. I did a sentiment in Misty Moonlight with a die cut, and I used the Expressions in Ink Ephemera pack to add some snowflakes. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys learned how to use the mask through Stampin' Up. I hope I've inspired you to try something new with all of these techniques. I hope you enjoyed Stampin' Up masks 4 different ways. Have a nice night.